In a featureless void of pure white, an unremarkable figure sat before a glowing computer screen, his eyes wide with anticipation as he scrolled through a survey. His name? Not really relevant. After all, he was about to leave his mundane existence behind. A reincarnation awaited him, rendering any prior details trivial. Still, let's briefly touch on his story. Like countless others, he was a typical Gen Z otaku. Anime, manga, manhwa, and web novels consumed his days. His end? Fittingly absurd. Struck by truck koan while engrossed in reading Lookism on his phone. Oblivious to traffic. Classic. When he came to, there was no divine figure, no celestial fanfare. Just an old-school desktop computer, and a chair conjured into existence. A bizarre yet strangely fitting scenario. Why, you ask? Because I put them there. Let's cut to the chase. Right now, he's picking his boons for the reincarnation lottery. His new life. In an alternate Lookism universe as none other than Daniel Park. Beginning on the day he gains his second body. His choices: intelligence boost, memory boost, comprehension boost, parallel thinking, solid picks. Now onto the real story. Daniel's POV. The first thing I saw when I opened my eyes was the decrepit ceiling of a shabby shack. Turning my head, a neck craning feet, thanks to my overweight body, I caught sight of my other self. My new handsome self. So this really happened, I muttered, the reality of reincarnation settling in. There was no sudden memory injection, no system notifications. Just clarity. The enhancements I chose had sharpened my mind like a finely honed blade. Thoughts flowed effortlessly, organized and precise. Then the anger hit. Veins bulged in my neck as yesterday's humiliations replayed in my mind. Zach Lee, fueled by petty jealousy, had beaten me senseless after a run-in with Mira. The whole thing was filmed, posted online, and shared relentlessly. A public spectacle of my misery. That version of Daniel? Weak, self-pitying, ungrateful. A spineless fool who took hundreds of chapters to grow into someone respectable. I refused to waste the potential of this second chance. *A/N, no hate to Daniel. His growth arc is one of my favorites. But this is my story now. I'll train both bodies to their peak. Starting with this one. The fat body Zach so easily underestimated. The satisfaction of crushing him with this body will be unmatched. And with parallel thinking, I can control both bodies seamlessly. No one will see it coming. As for you, Charles Choi, stay out of my way. For now though, I need to prepare. Tomorrow is my first day at J-High. Time to train. Author's POV. The sun rose on Daniel jogging around the block, his oversized body heaving with each labored step. Sweat poured from his forehead, soaking his ill-fitting clothes. But his eyes burned with determination. Each stride was a battle, each breath a struggle. The sight might have been comical if not for the raw grit he displayed. After an hour, his legs buckled, and he collapsed onto the pavement, chest heaving. "Haha, damn, this is hard," he muttered, glaring at the sky as if challenging the heavens. But giving up wasn't an option. This world had its own rules, where effort translated directly into results. Daniel pushed himself back up, attacking a circuit of exercises, squats, push-ups, sit-ups, anything to push his limits. At a nearby bar, he attempted pull-ups, his arms trembling under the strain. After just a few reps, he fell, gasping for air. Undeterred, he downed water and resumed his grueling routine, repeating the cycle until his body refused to move. 2 hours of relentless training later, he passed out, utterly spent. Daniel's POV. I woke in my second body, the one blessed with model-like features. Stretching, I grimaced. Even this body feels weak, I muttered. Switching back to my other body, I carried it to the shack. Tomorrow was school, and I needed clothes for my second body. Showing up half-naked wasn't an option. After ensuring the first body rested, I showered, ate, and left for the shopping center. As I walked, the stares began. Disgust, pity, contempt. "What the hell are you looking at?" I barked, my voice echoing down the street. Startled, the gawkers hurried away. Cowards. In this world, weakness was an invitation to be crushed. Not anymore. This is just the beginning, Daniel muttered under his breath, cursing the retreating figures. In this world, if you were weak-willed, You'd only get crushed. As he walked on, a sudden realization hit him like a ton of bricks. Fuck. I don't have any money. I'm poor as hell, he groaned, his frustration bubbling over. It was easy to forget that early on, Daniel was dirt poor. His mind raced for a solution. Robbing bullies. Fastest way to get some cash. Decision made. Daniel set off toward a nearby school. The plan? Find some low-life delinquents, teach them a lesson, and take their money. What if he lost? He didn't care. Losing wasn't failure. It was just another step on the path to ascend. 20 minutes later, he stood near a random school, observing the students milling about. His focus narrowed on a group of delinquent-looking teens heading toward an alley. 4 guys and a girl. Smoking. Laughing. Perfect. Time to throw hands, he thought, scooping up 2 rocks and hiding them behind his back as he approached. One of the delinquents, a scrawny kid with greasy hair, noticed him first. Huh. Guys, look at this fat ass, he snickered, pointing at Daniel. Ugly as hell, right? Veins bulged on Daniel's forehead. Shut the fuck up, you little bitch, Daniel shot back, his voice sharp enough to cut through steel. The group froze, momentarily stunned. Then the scrawny one laughed nervously. What did you just say? Did this fat midget just insult me? The girl chimed in, her voice dripping with disgust. Yeah, he did. And he's definitely not from our school. Someone this ugly would already be infamous. Their ringleader suddenly perked up, realization dawning on his face. Wait, isn't he that loser from the viral video? The one who got his ass handed to him? He pointed at Daniel and burst into laughter, joined by the others. Before another word could be said, a rock flew through the air, smashing into the leader's face. Blood sprayed as he crumpled to the ground, clutching his nose in shock. Daniel didn't stop. The second rock found its target in the scrawny kid, who yelped in pain. Fueled by rage, Daniel lunged at the leader, delivering a precise, powerful punch to his jaw that knocked him out cold. The others stood frozen in disbelief. Seizing the moment, Daniel body slammed the blonde, pinning him to the ground. Punches rained down like a storm, splattering blood onto the pavement. The remaining guy, summoning his courage, tried to kick Daniel. Big mistake. Daniel saw the kick coming in what felt like slow motion. He shifted his weight, absorbing the blow, and grabbed the delinquent's leg, yanking him off balance. Without hesitation, Daniel delivered a brutal punch to the guy's groin, sending him collapsing in agony. Picking up one of the discarded rocks, Daniel brought it down on the guy's face, ending the fight. Only the girl remained. She trembled, tears streaming down her ruined makeup as she tried to crawl away. Please don't hurt me, she sobbed, her voice breaking. Daniel loomed over her, his expression cold and unyielding. You're the type who's strong against the weak, but weak against the strong. Tell me, have you ever bullied anyone? She averted her eyes, stammering a denial. Daniel wasn't buying it. Without hesitation, he delivered a sharp punch to her face, silencing her pleas. Turning back to the blonde, who was still conscious, he knocked him out with a final blow before rifling through their belongings. The haul? A pair of clean shoes that fit, a watch, and nearly 50,000 won. Huh. No wonder the kings are rich. I should rob them too, Daniel laughed, exhilarated by his success. But first I need to visit the monk. That iron boxing style could come in handy. With his spoils secured, Daniel returned home to stash the goods before heading out again. Along the way, he dealt with a few Lookism-like encounters, dispatching troublemakers with ease. At the shopping center, he picked up simple clothes for both bodies. For his second body, he chose a clean combo of black pants and a white t-shirt, a nod to the sleek style of UI Daniel. He also bought 2 pairs of white Nike Air Force Ones, and to round it off, a new phone and laptop. The source of funds? His newly discovered bully hunting money glitch. Okay, with everything set, let's begin. Daniel's plan was simple. Using his second body, he'd create Instagram and TikTok accounts, posting photos and videos to build a massive following. Once famous, he'd launch a brand and rake in the cash. Meanwhile, his first body would undergo intense training. Thanks to parallel thinking, he could do both simultaneously. The 2 bodies faced each other, fists outstretched for a dap. Clap. They burst into laughter. Man, it's weird seeing myself like this, they said in unison. Without wasting another second, the handsome Daniel got to work studying photography, videography, and fighting techniques, particularly those from Samdak's channel. By day's end, thanks to his boosts, he'd mastered the basics. Meanwhile, the bulky Daniel pushed his body to the limit, training with weights until failure and striking hard surfaces until his hands throbbed with pain. Every session brought noticeable improvement in strength and speed. By nightfall, both bodies were exhausted but satisfied. The journey had only just begun, but Daniel was already carving his path to the top, his way.
Hey everyone, Quantum Audiobook here. Sorry for interrupting, but if you're enjoying this content, please consider subscribing to the channel. Also, feel free to share your thoughts on this novel in the comments, and don't forget to like the video.
Haha fuck. I can't move. Daniel was currently panting and cursing while complaining. It has been 6 hours of gruesome training, and he was so tired that his whole body won't move. Every single muscle of his was screaming of pain thanks to the specific exercises he did. With the second body, he searched online the correct methods for training every part of the body. And with that he did a full body workout. The result we're showing already since his fat was leaving little by little. Currently both bodies were at home, and while the second was on the laptop editing the photos he took earlier, the first was on the bed without moving. Since the body could not move, Daniel used the second to bring back home the first, while disconnecting the consciousness from it. He let the first body sleep while he continued to study. Thanks to the memory boost, Daniel only needed to see, hear, feel and taste something once to remember it perfectly. And you can bet a chicken if he did use this cheat. He first watched all the videos of Samdak at 2x speed since the laptop could support it. He spent 2 hours of constant focus and learning. And thanks to the intelligence and comprehension boost, he fully understood everything. He watched many videos of boxing, taekwondo, judo, grappling, and capoeira. With videos of professional fights like MMA tournaments or iconic professional fights. All of this increased his knowledge about fighting. He couldn't watch every martial arts because that's impossible, so he learned the ones he might need for now. During afternoon while the first body was training, he practiced every move he learned outside and incorporated them in a way that became an instinct. Currently he is still trying the strength of the second body, but without a strong opponent it's difficult. But the moment he will fight someone strong he will exponentially grow. Let's not talk about mastery or thresholds. Having finished with the martial arts learning, Daniel studied about fashion, photos, videos and music. But while he was researching he realized he prefers utilizing his talents in drawing, animation and game making. But we will talk about that in another time. So he just took good photos and videos and posted them online. What if they recognize the second body? Or worse, Elite will give him a visit. That's what he wants. While Daniel was sleeping, the photos and videos became viral thanks to some thirsty women who talked about it online. The jealous men helped too. Overnight the Instagram account of Big Daniel gained 20,000 followers with thousands of likes. AU Lookism, right? Morning. Currently the two Daniels were having breakfast in silence. While eating, Daniel thought, it's really weird eating from two different bodies at the same time. He looked at the calendar and said with the fat body, first day at school-y? Zach, your character becomes better in the latter part of the story, so I will not break too many of your bones. Even though Zach became a better person down the line, right now he is a high school bully, so Daniel will not have any problem beating him up. Yeah, I will take his money too. The madman has tasted the easy money, so he will not stop anymore. Now that I remember, there's Vin Jean too. After the death of Songji Yuk, and despite all those teachings he still bullies Duke. What a disgrace. I will pay him a visit and learn Sirium and Kudo. He made his decision. While eating he suddenly got up and shouted, fuck, I forgot. There is Mary Kim too. I will learn judo from her. And ask her out on a date. He nodded and quickly finished the food. He wore the school uniform and ran outside towards the school, while the second body headed on another way, his business unknown. Arriving on time he entered school. The people didn't pay too much attention at his appearance, thanks to the gruesome training he did yesterday that caused his body to become taller and lose some weight. He was less ugly, and he looked like a slightly fat guy. On the fashion department class we can see the students being noisy. And if we focus on a short guy with glasses, we can see that he is being bullied and forced to fan some fodders. The fodders being Duel and his friends. The homeroom teacher comes in and tells everyone to be quiet. Okay, quiet. Class, today we have a new transfer student. You can enter, he said, and Daniel walked in. The students looked at him and some even laughed in silence, gossiping with each other. Daniel memorized their faces for some punches of love later. He came on the desk and said clearly and firmly, "Listen well, who makes fun of my weight will get hurt. So don't piss me off. I will be your new classmate. So from now on don't piss me off," he stated, shaking everyone. Duel bursted into laughter and said, "With your fat body, do you want to have an attitude here?" Haha dash. He didn't even finish when Daniel took a table and threw it at him, cleanly hitting him on the body. Smash. Agu, he screamed and smashed on the end of the class. Daniel said, "He is the first example. I will not oppress no one. But if you disturb me or even annoy me, I'ma clap yo asses." He turned towards the shook teacher and threatened with a low voice that only the two of them could hear. "I hope word won't spread about this. You wouldn't want a visit from me. Why did he behave like that? Simple. He is fat currently, and if he plays the nice guy, people will constantly make problems with him. And he needs a reputation of someone that is ready to smoke to take control of the school." The teacher fearfully nodded and Daniel walked towards the free seat. And ho and behold, it was next to his next victim. Zach Lee. "Hey motherfucker, do you remember me?" Daniel asked while coming closer to Zach, who got up too and responded, Asshole, I don't know you. What the fuck do you want?" "Me? Nothing important. I just want to repay a debt." Daniel smiled. "Me? Nothing important. I just want to repay a debt." Daniel smiled. He sat back on the chair while saying, "We will continue later, since I don't want to disturb the teacher." Zach looked at him weirdly and sat back. The teacher begun the lecture, the time passed quickly, and the time for the cafeteria arrived. Daniel turned toward Zach, who was getting up to go and simp after Mira. He looked at him go over her, and begun to talk. "Mira, do you want to eat with me?" he asked with a simp voice, trying hard to convince her. She hesitated and declined. "I'm sorry, Zach, but I will eat with the girls today. Maybe another time." She wanted to spend time with her friends today. And Zach lowered his head with sadness. But a loud laugh made him turn his head sharply towards the source, and saw Daniel laughing while pointing at him. "Ha ha ha, look at Mr. Simp, ha ha ha. What are you gonna do now? Are you gonna wear a collar and begin to bark while moving your tail?" Ha ha ha. Daniel was having so much fun seeing in real life how much of a simp Zach is. So he grasped the situation, and found an exist to make him mad. Zach with rage came to Daniel, and grabbed his collar, bringing his head closer and said, "What did you say, fat ass? Do you want to die?" Daniel stopped laughing and grabbed Zach's hand, and took it off from his collar, while punching his face, making him lose balance, while taking a step back in pain, surprising the rest of the class. "Hee hee motherfucker, today I will have my revenge," Daniel said, and got up from the chair, and took it, throwing it toward Zach, who dodged while cleaning the trace of blood on his mouth. Slam. "Fuck. You're crazy," Zach cursed while being surprised by the strength of the fat guy. "Do you have a problem with me?" he demanded, since from the beginning Daniel has showed hostility without hiding it. "Yeah bitch. Do you remember 2 days ago, right?" Daniel said, confusing the class. Zach looked at him, and responded, "No, I don't think we ever saw each other." He honestly did not remember Daniel, since the guy he beat up, and the mad dog of now, had 2 different auras, and the current Daniel looked less hideous and thinner. His strong personality didn't help neither. Daniel smiled. He took his phone from his pocket, and played a video on YouTube showing it to the class, and especially Zach, who became shocked and pointed at Daniel. "Impossible. How can you be that fat midget?" he denied while insulting the mad dog without realizing it, causing veins to appear on Daniel's face. "Do you understand how much of a humiliation you caused me? Only because I talked to Mira. And you don't even remember it. You know, I trained gruesomely for an entire day just to beat the fuck out of you today," he said while sprinting towards Zach, who threw a jab at Daniel. Daniel deflected it, and swept his leg at Zach. But with his fat body, the boxer was able to dodge, delivering a punch on Daniel's face, who tanked it while grunting. He grabbed the arm using grappling and immobilized Zach, and he rained punches on his face. The two fought for some time, showing that they were on the same level. Zach with his polished boxing style, and Daniel with his street fighting with technique, was a difficult opponent for Zach, who couldn't read him, since he was so unpredictable and fierce. Gahaha, more. More. The crazy MF shouted while he slammed his heavy body into Zach, who continued to punch him, trying to knock him out. But with Daniel, will and tenacity, it didn't make the task easy. Damn, how did you become this strong? Zach said with difficulty while he was trying to pry off Daniel's grip on him. Haha, don't worry, after this you will know, lil pussy, he said, and with a burst of strength he lifted up Zach and slammed him on the ground, making him losing air from his lungs. A gob. Zach's eyes lost focus for a moment, and Daniel grabbed his throat and smashed his elbow on his face, knocking him out, shaking the others. Zach lost. I don't believe it, the fodders whispered among them, but Daniel didn't pay attention at those fodders and got up while saying, with this our debt is paid. Now we can be friends and good classmates. He smiled and turned to Mira, who felt intimidated. Don't worry, after this, I don't hold a grudge anymore, ha ha ha. He laughed while walking out towards the cafeteria. We can see Daniel currently eating, while analyzing his battle with Zach, noting the mistakes he made, and what he could have done more efficiently, ensuring his win with style. This fight made him realize that he and Zach were nearly on the same level. I've become stronger. That's good. He looked at his hands with satisfaction and nodded. Like I thought, fighting is the way to strength. Maybe I should take a break from school and visit that monk or gun. At the festival, I will be able to meet him. He contemplated, deciding that he will make a decision when he will be in front of gun. A/N. Who do you want the MC to pay a visit first? While Daniel was eating, an enraged Zach was running towards him and shouted, Bastard. I'm gonna kill you. Daniel turned around, coming face to face to a punch that sent him flying for some meters. He repositioned himself on the air and landed with calmness, his eyes on Zach with his smile clearly visible. Did you come to see your dad, Lil Zach? He shouted while laughing, attracting the attention of the whole cafeteria, including some people who begun to pay attention. Zach, full of rage, took a boxing stance with his eyes glowing. Damn, did he become stronger? Daniel noticed that Zach was full of conviction. Daniel was ready to fight again, but a hand was placed on Zach's shoulder and a voice said, Zach, I think this is enough. You need to stop bullying people. Zach turned around and shoved the hand away while cursing, Fuck off, Vasco. Don't disturb me. This caused Vasco to frown and say, What happened? He asked, since seeing Zach this angry was rare. Haha, even Vasco. This is better. Let's fight, Daniel said, and sprinted towards both of them while laughing, surprising the duo. TSX. Madman, Zachanoid sprinted toward Daniel too, and threw a jab much faster than before. Haha, even Vasco. This is better. Let's fight, Daniel said, and sprinted towards both of them while laughing, surprising the duo. TSX. Madman, Zachanoid sprinted toward Daniel too, and threw a jab much faster than before. But Daniel evaded his jab and headed toward Vasco, catching him off guard. Vasco, surprised, took a stance ready to defend himself, but Daniel, fooling the both of them, took a sharp turn, and using his hand as a support, he pressed on the ground and delivered a sharp axe kick at Zach, who lowered his guard, thinking Daniel was targeting Vasco. Pam! Zach managed to barely block the kick, but this caused him to lower his leg to stabilize himself, giving an opportunity at Daniel, who returned on the ground, and with a speed his fat body shouldn't be able to execute, he managed to insert a powerful uppercut at Zach, who got his arms on top of him. Bomb ug dash. Gahaha, I'm loving this. Daniel laughed with a crazy smile while saying, You should never lose your attention on the surroundings, Zach. Meanwhile, Vasco came at the rescue of Zach with a knee kick. Pam. Right, Vasco? Daniel said with a smile while he turned his head and looked at the surprised Vasco, who didn't expect Daniel to block his move. Just like I said to Zach, I always pay attention at my surroundings. And with the leg grabbed, he threw Vasco onto Zach, hurting them both. As a second lesson that I'm giving to my two students, he said, dramatically enraging Zach even more and making Vasco regard him as a bad guy. He continued seriously, If you want to be strong, your will is a major factor. So have the conviction about your ideals and objectives. The duo got up and looked at each other and nodded with an expression that said this MF needs to be taken down. So they decided to jump him together. Ooh? Did the two students decided to jump their master? I shall teach you some sense. Oh, I'm so sad. Why did my favorite students jump me? Daniel screamed like a crazy monkey while he was touching himself all over. The duo was shocked at the absurdity of the situation. While they were contemplating their next move, Daniel took a chair and threw it towards them. The speed and power of it was even higher than before. Fuck, he became even stronger. Is this a fucking boss fight or what? Shouted Zach in frustration while he and Vasco dodged the missile, only to spot another coming at high speed. Spam, ×4. Gahahaha, take my special move. Daniel was having the time of his life while he was throwing the chairs all over the cafeteria. But if one watched closely, the chairs were only thrown at the duo, but they never touched the bystanders. But suddenly Daniel took a chair and threw it towards Vasco, who dodged it. And at the last moment he realized that it wasn't pointed towards him. Bam! Fuck. This asshole threw the chair at me. Come here that I'm gonna smash your face. An enraged guy with extremely dark glasses cursed while he took of the broken pieces of the chair off his body. Haha, since you're here too, I thought of including you here, Daniel said while laughing, causing Vin to become even more angry. While Daniel was pissing off three pupils, Zach got behind him and threw a powerful cross towards his nape. But Daniel dodged it while looking at the slow punch passing by. Good. I'm stimulating their potential, he thought while analyzing Zach from head to toe, and executed the same exact cross but faster and stronger, clearly hitting him on his torso, removing the air from his lungs. Zach's eyes opened in shock and pain, but before he could react, Daniel grabbed him and placed his body where Vin was trying to grab Daniel, causing him to grab Zach instead. Daniel seized the opportunity and kicked the leg of Vin, causing him to bend his knee, while Daniel grabbed the punch of Vasco, raising him off the ground and smashing him on top of Vin and Zach. Boom. The three of them took heavy damage, and Daniel took some steps back while thinking, they are inexperienced, and Vin isn't seeing well with the glasses. But I need to distance myself from him. He looked at the nearly passed out Zach. I'm sure he got a reality check today. That's good, he smiled. Poor Zach, he suffered triple damage, putting him down while grasping for air. Gahaha, is this what you can do? I guess I need to teach my disciples some more. Daniel provoked them, so they won't work well together. Vin and Vasco got up. Vin, I need your help. We need to work together to take him down. Vasco wanted to collaborate, but Vin sprinted while shouting, fuck that. I'm taking him myself. He lost the reason with rage. Not like it hasn't happened before. He came to Daniel trying to grab him, but Daniel, being more smart, just took his glasses off, causing Vin to retract his arms and cover his eyes. Oh, look at this fool, Daniel mocked while grabbing his arm, and using Aikido he flipped him, and with a precise, powerful punch on the face, he smashed Vin on the ground, breaking some pieces of floor. Ugh, Vin grunted. Daniel knew that his durability was high, so he punched again with even more force towards his face. But before he could hit Vin, Vasco delivered a knee kick on Daniel's ribs. Since he was fully focused on Vin thanks to his strength, Daniel wasn't able to react fast enough to block the attack. Bam! Daniel flew for some meters, but he repositioned himself and landed. That hit was stronger, he noted while caressing his ribs. Thanks to his fat, the hit got slightly nullified, but he still feels the pain. Vasco took the glasses from the ground and gave them to Vin. Here, I think you need them, he said while Vin took the glasses. In the back, Zach regained some energy and slowly got up while bleeding from the mouth. He wiped the bloodline and walked towards the duo. The now trio was together, and they simultaneously decided to work together for this time, to win against a mad dog. Oh, did you decide to work together? Finally. I was getting bored, Daniel smiled while looking at them. The trio got ready for the round 3. Oh, did you decide to work together? Finally. I was getting bored, Daniel smiled while looking at them. The trio got ready for the round 3. Dry in. Oh, I guess we will continue another time. I have something to do. Daniel turned around and begun to walk away, but after some seconds he looked back at the trio. Vin, with his bloodied face, was looking at him with a murderous intent, but reluctantly. The fear of breaking his glasses greater than his rage, so he calmed down and gave a good look at Daniel, and then walked away. Vasco, with heavy breathing, was looking at Daniel cautiously, and Zach was barely standing straight. Daniel smirked and walked away. Daniel is currently in class and chilling while looking at the window. Now that's capping. He was making faces at Zach, who was trembling in rage and stress. He was really tired by this motherfucker, who by the moment he came, he continued to bring trouble to him. And what is even more infuriating is that his body is still full of pain. And this Daniel is continuing to poke him where it hurts. And when he wants to confront him, that bastard immediately turns his head and behaves like nothing ever happened. This shit is really making him go insane. Zach, Daniel said, and Zach turned his head sharply and said ferociously, "What the fuck do you want?" He stopped his phrase, seeing Daniel, who was looking at him seriously. He opened his mouth and said, "Zach, after school follow me. From now on I will train you. You're too weak for my plans." Daniel said matter-of-factly, "What?" Zach was surprised. "Listen, asshole. I'm not your slave." He definitely refused. Why should he follow this crazy MF? Daniel smiled and turned his head. "Okay, but don't complain when you will not be able to protect Mira from our future enemies," he said casually. Zach's eyes widened. He opened his mouth and then closed it. "Humph. I will see what you want to do." And with that, Daniel acquired his first devil fruit. Zach know me? Drop stones, comments and reviews before I use my threshold of begging smiling face with sunglasses. We can see a young man currently seated in front of a desk. And behind was seated a woman who was ogling the man who was the description of perfection. He coughed a little and said, "Madam." Big Daniel said, calling the woman who was too much distracted. She came back on her senses and looked at Daniel. Yeah. "Mr. Daniel, you came here to prepare the documents for the registration of a clothing business. Is that correct?" She asked for the NT time. Daniel nodded and said, "Yes, can I know the procedures?" He already knew them, but by asking the woman will have a reason to make things easier for him. The woman smiled and said, "To open a clothes business you will need the following steps. Register your business. Pick your business type. Get a unique name. Get permits and licenses. Sort out taxes. Find a location. Importing. Tell people about your business and follow the rules. Make sure you follow all the laws about working and hiring people." She explained the various details for some time. "I can help you by contacting a friend of mine. What do you think?" she asked sweetly, and Daniel smiled. "It would be perfect. I will make sure to make you a unique dress," he said charmingly, and the woman smiled. Big Daniel took an entire day going here and there to successfully complete all the procedures. It would have took more time, but with his looks, it took only a day. What's even better was that the woman gave him even some money for the startup. She only asked for some personalized dresses. He was currently at the house with his new computer and drawing tab. He was making the various models and designs for the clothes. He decided to do different styles for males, females, and children. For the males, he chose simple designs for males, like simple t-shirts with only the logo on the left chest. The colors will be the basic pack: black, white, blue, gray, brown, and green. He will make sweatshirts, jackets, tracksuits, men's formal clothes, trousers, and cargo pants. For the women, he will make many types like the ones for the males, but more feminine, with formal dresses, and the colors will be more vibrant. For the children's will be simple, cute clothes. He will not do shoes or other accessories for now, since he wants to create a brand image first. He already created a website, and he is currently giving it details to make it simple and effective. The brand name will be Simple, since that's his mark, simple and clean. While Big Daniel is currently working, Lil Daniel is outside the school with Zach. They were waiting for someone. "Listen, I don't have time to waste with you. I have things to do. I want to meet Mira." The boxer continued to complain while Daniel ignored him. He was waiting for Vasco so he can begin their training. Why did he decide to train them? Well, the sooner they become stronger, the sooner he will be able to take down Charles and discover the secrets of the second body. He decided to train a little Zach and then bring him to the monk, while Vasco will be sent to Brekdak. He will try to take Eli Jang with him, since his potential is really high. But for that he will need to convince him. And what's better way then? He didn't know how. Vin is a good choice too, but he will need to deal with his trauma. So Taejin will be one victim. A smile formed on Daniel's face. When he will catch that fake nigga. Oh boy. In his past life he had a little sister, so what that MF did really triggered him. Vasco came out with the burned knuckles. After some steps he saw Daniel and Zach together, so he walked towards them. Daniel smiled and said, "Are you ready for some training?" he asked, and Vasco, still regarding him as a bad guy, said, "You bad. I will need Aro teach you a lesson." Daniel smiled and said, "Hee, sorry for before. I wanted to see if you were strong." This made Vasco scratch his head, thinking that it was a compliment, but the next words of the fatty were different. "But you are weak as fuck. How will you be able to beat the big bad guy?" Vasco looked at Daniel with confusion. "Who is the big bad guy?" he asked, wondering if Daniel is just messing with him, but the fatty responded with, "He is the one who created the 4 major crews. One such crew is named God Dog." That name made Zach's eyes widen, and a serious look appeared on his face. Daniel continued, "They reside in Gangbuk, north of the Han River. Their leader is Johan Song, a dear friend of Zach." His words made Vasco look at Zach with a questioning look, and the boxer grabbed the fatty's shoulders and asked hurriedly, "Tell me what you know, please," he asked and pleaded, pain present on his face. Daniel looked at him deeply and said, "You're too weak and poor to help him. But if you will help me, I will help you." He then turned to Vasco, who was still confused. "And the friend of Zach is forced to maintain the crew, because the big bad guy has control on the 4 crews. And that guy has 2 guards, really strong guards. So we need to be stronger. Much stronger if we want to take down that motherfucker." This convinced Vasco, who didn't need another motive, and nodded. "Okay, let's go and train." He was already exited for the training, not realizing that a crazy MF will be his teacher. Poor Lego Vasco. "Daniel," Zach called the fatty, who turned his head toward him. He asked, and Zach looked at him seriously. He said, "It's what you said, the truth." Daniel nodded. "Don't ask how I know, but Johan is trying to raise enough money to pay for his mother eye surgery. But he doesn't realize that he got fooled. I know a good doctor that can do the job." Daniel said, "Even thought that UNC is currently not right on the head. But the future me will deal with that. You can ask Johan when you will meet him. But as how you're right now, you would only get killed if you involve yourself in that chaos." He reassured him and warned, "So you better give your all with the training. If you do well, I will bring you with me to visit a boxer. For that we will need money." Zach looked at his calloused hands and gathered his determination. He nodded at Daniel and said, "Count me in," and the fatty smirked. "Heh, if you refused, I would have kidnapped you." Sweat appeared on the boxer face. Daniel looked around the school towards the students that were going home. He spotted a weak-looking guy with big glasses and a scrawny frame. While he was following some bullies, Daniel walked toward them while the duo behind him followed. We can see Jinho while he was lighting a cigarette for Duel and his friends. "So tell me, Jinho, have you managed to invite Daniel into our group?" Duel asked while taking a puff. Jinho hesitated a little and responded, "I am sorry I wasn't able to reach him. He is always moving around, and I didn't manage to talk to him," he said with his head down. Duel looked at him with disappointment and shook his head. One of his friend raised his hand to slap him, but before he could move, a fat blur appeared near him, and with a powerful punch on the face, he slammed the bully on the ground, taking him out. "Ah, what a good feeling speed blitzing people is," Daniel said with satisfaction. He was on a good mood. He looked down at Jinho, who was trembling. He said with authority, "From now on you will follow me." Jinho nodded hurriedly. He looked at Duel and said, "Stay away from Jinho from now on. And if I catch you bullying anyone again, I'ma sell your organs, believe me. I would gladly do it," he said, scaring the shit out of Duel, who nodded. Daniel lost interest in him and walked away while Zach knocked out the other fodder. "Fucking pathetic," he said, pissed at that man, and walked behind Daniel while Vasco lent a hand to Jinho. "Why did you punch him?" Daniel asked, curious, and Zach responded, "He always followed me around disturbing me, so I took the opportunity to beat him." Daniel nodded. It makes sense since strength rule here. The 4 guys were currently on a junkyard. We could see Vasco, who was wearing weights all over his body and was hitting the metal objects with punches and kicks. His body red from the continuous smashing, and his breathing heavy. The weights were doing their job. On the other part of the junkyard, we can see Zach, who had a washing machine strapped on his back, and with weights on both the legs and arms. He was continuously doing squats and jumping around with the fastest speed he could produce, everything while trying to throw jabs and crosses. His face clearly describing his regret of following that madman training, not realizing that he was becoming faster. While the two slaves are training, we can see Daniel, who was whooping the ass of another victim. We can see that he is training his new student with love. Waha, help. Help dash bang, shut your ass up. Give me another 5 push-ups. Daniel punched the head of Jinho, while the poor guy was red like a tomato, his weak arms trembling from the difficulty. You have talent, but you're currently a bitch. But don't worry. I will man you up, lil boy. The crazy smile of Daniel made Jinho's face become even more pale. He was asking himself, what did he do to suffer this torture? For the next hours till night, Daniel instructed and trained the trio. He devised a different training for each of them. For Zack, a speed and body training, preparing for Gongseeb future torture. And for Vasco, the mad dog made him punch all the hard things while having heavy weights. He will need that, since his strength is his weapon. He intends to make a Teisuma that won't just use only a hand. While with Jinho, he made the same training that he did. Since Jinho has a good potential that wasn't never fully explored, Daniel wants to see how far Jinho will be able to go. But with his bitch-like mentality, that will never happen. So he is training him in that too. But this is a really delicate work, because he doesn't want Jinho to take the crazy MF path. More like the smart one. It's morning, Daniel and Ko are walking inside the school. The nearby students were looking at the 4 people weirdly. Why? Well, ugh. We can see Jinho, who was walking with a face that said he had no sleep. His baggy and dark eyes were clearly a sign. His messy hair indicating their neglect of the day. Yesterday the poor lad was tortured by the mad dog for the entire night, only receiving his break when the fatty needed to go back home. But sadly he didn't manage to sleep much since the pain in his body didn't let him rest. Robotic sounds. On his right we can see a complete mummy. The boss of Burn Knuckles was currently walking like C-3PO from Star Wars. Since he spent the majority of his time hitting hard materials, he was forced to bandage himself all over his body. Thankfully his mother helped. But since the bandages are well wrapped he can't walk well. On the left of Jinho we have our boxer Zack Lee, who was walking slowly with a slight limp, but nothing strange was seen outside of his body. Fuck. Can I take them off, Daniel? I'm dying. Oh. Yeah, he still has the weights on himself, making it really hard for him to move. Nah, you can't. Daniel denied while sipping on his juice. Veins appeared on Zack's face. Bastard. You made me wear this shit, but here are you walking normally. He was aggrieved. Why does he need to suffer? While Daniel is chilling. Are you sure? Daniel smirked and opened his collar a little, showing a weight on himself, causing a look of surprise appear on Zack's face. And when he read the weight he became shocked. Fuck. Daniel was wearing the double of his weights without even showing tiredness. See, it's just a matter of conviction. When you have a strong conviction you can do everything. Daniel entered his teacher mode while Zack looked at the ground with shame. He was there complaining while the fatty was doing even more than him without a sweat. I need to become better. He made up his mind. Jinho looked at Daniel and asked, Daniel, who was the guy of this morning? While they meet at Daniel's house in the morning the 3 students saw a guy with Daniel. The guy was the epitome of perfection, shooking Jinho. So he wondered who that man was. Oh, Daniel? He is a friend of mine. He is really strong. Daniel explained and Vasco asked, where did he go? When they were heading towards school the second body took another road, his direction unknown. Daniel smiled. Well, he went to recruit a potential ally for our crew. He explained and Zack asked, oh right, you didn't tell us the crew name. He reminded Daniel, who smirked and said, the crew name will be Allied. Please drop some stones and reviews, it would really help me. PTJ Entertainment. PTJ Entertainment is an idol training agency, being the starting ground for many successful idols. The agency has one of the greatest idols produced, DG. DG was currently walking outside of the agency towards his car. But he felt a gaze and turned his head towards a man that was eating chips. The man being the second body of Daniel. We will call him Big Daniel. Daniel was enjoying his chips while his fat body was drinking the juice. A really enjoyable combo, since he could enjoy both tastes at the same time. DG seeing Big Daniel, his eyes widened for a second, his calm face breaking. He didn't expect to see the second body. Daniel smiled and waved at him and turned and walked away. DG looked deeply at his back and followed. The two waked for some minutes, arriving at an abandoned warehouse. Daniel turned around and smiled at DG while finishing his chips. DG didn't talk, being a man of few words. He was waiting for Daniel to begin. But what he didn't calculate was that he was in front of a motherfucker who enjoyed fucking with people. So for the next 10 minutes only the sound of chips being munched slowly was heard. A slight vein appeared on DG's face, already losing his patience with this bastard. Daniel, having finally finished his chips, threw the plastic bag away and spoke. "Tell me the secret of the second body." His smile never leaving his face, DG feigned ignorance and responded, "I don't know what you're talking about." At that, Daniel shook his head and said, "It's useless, James." James' aura changed and demanded, "How?" Which Daniel made a funny face and said, "I don't know what you're talking about." Even more veins appeared on James' face. "It's incredible how this man managed to irritate him this easily," Daniel said. "See? It's pretty triggering when someone plays dumbly. Come on. Tell me the secret, big-ass forehead." His remark made James touch his forehead with doubt, wondering if what Daniel said was true. "I don't know nothing about the second body." James continued to deny and Daniel signed. It doesn't matter. You will tell me after I will clap yo ass." James' brows widened and asked, "You what dash?" Bam. He didn't manage to finish his question when he needed to block a straight punch towards his handsome face, his eyes widening at the strength behind the punch. "Let's see what the first-generation legend can do. Entertain me, princess." Daniel smiled crazily while dodging a kick from James, who distanced himself. James looked at his hand and looked at Daniel, who was doing stretches. He realized that a fight is inevitable. So deciding to take the initiative, he speeded towards the stretching Daniel and delivered an ace kick that Daniel deflected while grabbing his collar. But what Daniel grabbed was a silhouette of the pink head, who was now on top of him with his hand on his head and his legs on the air. James kicked from that position, but Daniel dodged. "It's useless. I can see your attacks," he mocked. On the abandoned warehouse, the two men were in front of each other. The pink-haired one was asserting the black-haired one, who was smiling with a mocking face. "You better use your full strength, or you will get hurt. Wait. Have you become weaker?" Daniel made a shocked face, while pointing at James, who got a tick mark on his head. James' eyes sharpened, and he disappeared, appearing in front of Daniel, while unleashing mini kicks aimed on various parts of Daniel. James' eyes were glowing blue. "Speed threshold." Daniel smirked and decided to tank them all. Pam. X36. His body not giving up even though the speed of James' kick generated a high power. "Gahahaha, you will need more for that." Daniel grabbed James' leg and pulled, causing the latter balance to falter. The second body didn't waste time and unleashed a powerful right punch on James' left ribcage. Ugh dash. James' face contorted in pain, a punch stronger than Tesu, but without the help of the strength threshold. He expected Daniel to be strong, but not at this level. Even though he knew that the second body got the perfect genetics, his pride of the first-generation legend still made him underestimate Daniel. Boom! The punch sent James flying towards the wall, but before he could touch it, his face was grabbed and smashed on the wall, breaking it. James was shocked. He didn't expect Daniel to be this ruthless. "Gahahaha. What? You thought that I would let you fly peacefully? Wake up, this is not a manhwa." Daniel smiled viciously. Take T-dash, boom, a strong and fast kick was thrown on his face, sending him smashing on the ground for some meters. But he got up with a little blood flowing from his nose. Nothing serious, his smile widening. "Gahaha. Did you decide to take me seriously?" James walked out from the destroyed wall while removing the concrete and dust remains, his face a little bloodied. He looked at Daniel and said, "The warm-up is over. Let's see if you will help me improve." He smiled with his eyes widening, his aura changing to the one he got when he was in his prime. "No, he is in his prime. Please drop some stones and reviews, it would really help me." On a food stall we can see two men eating peacefully. The one with the dark glasses and black hair scratched his head and said, "I don't know. I feel like we're missing at an important moment." He felt really strange. The blonde guy looked at him weirdly and laughed. "Ha ha ha. Gun. What the fuck did you eat this morning?" "Gahahaha," he mocked his friend while punching his shoulder. He was really wondering if this fool ate something bad. "Fuck off." Boom 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 boom. Two silhouettes were moving with extreme speed, while continuing to unleash powerful and fast attacks at each other. The building was shaking continuously and many craters were around. Daniel threw a punch towards James, who deflected it with the technique threshold. But even then he was having difficulty to negate the force behind the punches. He's growing extremely fast. No, he is getting better at controlling his body. Every move he does is better than the last and more precise and powerful. James analyzed. At the beginning he was able to overpower Daniel with his 3 thresholds, but the more seconds passed the harder it became. What he didn't know was that with the intelligence and comprehension boss, Daniel was improving at an alarming rate. Even without the boost, the original Daniel was a prodigy, but now he was a masterpiece. What's wrong, James? Zesty hair. Daniel mocked the pink head, who frowned. He didn't really understand what this guy was saying, but something told him that it was an insult. James used the power threshold to leap in the air and unleash a powerful kick towards Daniel, the same he used against the glorious King Songji Yuk. A/N. Yeah, I'm glazing, so what? Fight me. Pam. James' eyes widened. Daniel smiled while grabbing James' leg. You will need to use more than 1 threshold at the same time to damage me. His eyes glowing. Not a threshold but conviction, boundless conviction. James, with a strong display of core strength, managed to kick with his other leg that was free, but Daniel grabbed it too and smashed him on the ground, forming a crater. Daniel stood on top of the fallen James, who was looking at the ceiling in daze. Daniel shook his head and said, "Something that I noticed. Every time you use a threshold, you only use 1 type at a time, never 2 or more at the same time." He realized that he never saw a character on the manhwa use more than a threshold. It is a coincidence? No, coincidences don't exist. His words surprised James. Even with his talent, he never managed to use more than 1 threshold at the same time. It's a pity. You didn't manage to force my Noti into unlocking a threshold. I guess I'm not at my limit yet. He turned around and begun to walk away. When I will need you, I will let you know. Bye. He waved his hands while continuing to walk away. But before he could walk away, he heard James getting up. He turned his head and saw James looking above. Daniel was only able to see his back and not his face. James took a deep breath and said, "Thank you for giving me this enlightenment," his voice tranquil. He lowered his head and looked at Daniel while only turning his head, his eyes glowing with a fusion of red, blue, and pink. Oh! Daniel's eyes widened and a massive smile appeared on his face. Daniel walked towards James. At every step his speed increased until he was running towards him, Daniel's smile never leaving his face. James turned around and did the same, and the two clashed in the air, their forearms in a showcase of strength. James smiled slightly, and with extreme ease he pushed Daniel, sending him flying. The combination of the speed, technique, and strength thresholds flipped this fight upside down. Daniel flipped in the air and landed gracefully. He looked forward and saw the shoes of James an inch of his face. Boom! A powerful blow took him in the air, his brain shaking from the impact, his eyes wide. This blow was completely on another level than the ones from before. Before he could move, he clearly saw James being on top of him with his leg raised. "Heh! He got me!" Spam. The pink-haired man slammed Daniel on the ground, breaking it. His face bloodied. He opened his eyes and looked at James behind his head with a raised leg, his gaze indifferent. Daniel smiled. Swish! The pink head axe kicked towards the second body head. But with pure conviction and fearlessness, Daniel grabbed the foot on the ground and flipped James upside down using Aikido, who even while being upside down unleashed a kick without difficulty. But Daniel was nowhere to be seen. James looked around and suddenly took a sharp turn, not seeing anyone. "I catched you, Ricky." James widened his eyes, and he felt a sharp pain on his left ribs. Ugh! He didn't expect that Daniel would grab his ribs bone. His eyes were glowing in blue color. Speed threshold. Daniel raised him whole like picking up a child with a hand. The pain continued to assault James, who used an invisible attack toward Daniel's face, who simply dodged by tilting his head. The second body raised James' body at the top and threw him on the ground. Bam! James kicked towards Daniel's belly while using the ground as a base. Daniel moved his hand and deflected the attack, but James disappeared and appeared behind him, and Daniel didn't back up, and the two clashed again. The more they fought, the more they improved. James became more familiar with the application the thresholds, while Daniel tried many techniques he read and saw online. Since his body was already familiar with the techniques, he improved them, beginning to create his own style. The more he pushed his body, the better his control got. His smile that was always vibrant was nowhere to be seen. He was serious. It doesn't matter from which angle he was, his attacks will always hurt and reach the opponent, while his defense was improving continuously. And then, he stood still, closed his eyes and breathed. James took the opportunity to unleash extremely fast and powerful kicks that Daniel just tanked without moving. He was just like an immovable barrier. James was shocked, so he used his full power for the strongest kick he could do. He jumped while kicking the air with so much power that he redirected his direction and flew towards Daniel. James' whole body spun, gaining speed and power. With a combination of strength, speed, and technique, with extreme balance, he unleashed his strongest kick. Daniel took the boxing defense stance, and James' kick touched his forearms. Boom! A sonic boom was heard, and the power behind the attack shook the entire building. The civilians hundreds of meters away felt the sound. Wah! James touched the ground and looked at Daniel, who didn't move even an inch, his stance still there and smoke on his arms. He breathed out with his visible eye glowing green. Endurance threshold. James looked at the second body. I am possible. He didn't got a scratch. Daniel returned to a normal position and looked at James, his gaze serious. He looked at his hands and said with a calm voice, "Thanks." He disappeared and James looked around with shook. He couldn't see his movements, and then, "Don't die, pink head." A deep voice was heard, and he saw Daniel appearing in front of him. Daniel's eyes brightened with an red color. Veins appeared on his arm and he punched. James' eyes widened and hurriedly tried to deflect with power, speed, and technique. But the punch was immovable, so James placed his arms to defend, and then, boom. Destruction. That's the simple explanation. The moment the punch came in contact with James' arms, the impact sent him towards the wall that broke. But there were other walls behind, so he continued. The result was complete destruction. He was lucky that Daniel held back at the last moment, so only his arms hurt massively, since the man needed the pink-haired help. Cough. James coughed for some time while breathing with difficulty, his body in pain. He barely felt his arm. Tap tap. Sounds of Daniel's steps were heard. James raised his head and looked at Daniel, who was walking calmly. It was a good fight. Thank you. He smiled while giving James a hand, who took it. The black hair helped the big ferret up while patting his back. Come on, let's go to the hospital, he said. James shook his head and said, no. Cough. I can manage. He was confident of his ability to recover, so Daniel didn't press further. The duo walked away together. Visit my Patreon, please. Don't forget to leave a review. James and Daniel were currently at a bar. They were in a private VIP room. So I suppose you need my help to take down Charles, right? James said, since with his intelligence he understood what Daniel wanted. Honestly, I still don't know. I especially visited you to improve. But if I need your help, I will tell you. He used the excuse of recruiting an ally, but he just wanted to fight James, since he could just go to Charles right now and kill him. But that would be boring. Okay, you know where to find me. James nodded and got up, but Daniel called him. Hell, now I'm not doing all that. Searching for you like some manhwa protagonist. Give me your number and I will call, he said while scratching his nose with his pinky. He was too lazy to do all that work. James looked at this weird man and shook his head, took out his phone and the two exang numbers. See you soon. By big off 4 he dashed. James didn't let him finish and slammed the door. Daniel laughed while ordering food. It's free since the pink head pays. On class, Lil Daniel was chilling. He turned his head towards the boxer and said, Hey, you better hurry and master the basics. I want to visit that monk, he said with irritation. After the second body fight, he was craving for a good battle. Zach, who was sweating, retorted, How I am able to master them if I'm in class? He was adapting slowly to the weights. Heh, not my problem. After some weeks we will go if everything is right, Daniel said, and Zach nodded, excited to learn from this so-called iron boxer. The weeks passed quickly. The plot continued, even thought some things changed, like how Zach behaved with Mira. Thanks to the teachings of Daniel, he was improving and was becoming less of a simp but more of a gentleman. He was more direct with Mira and expressed his feelings. Her response unknown, but the group saw them holding hands and understood. The bullying arc of Jinho and Lil Daniel never happened, so the school life was chill. Allied continued to train, and after 2 weeks Lil Daniel wasn't fat anymore. The transformation shook the class and many people at the school, but the boys weren't surprised. This Daniel will be called Lil Daniel or Small Daniel, while the second body will be Big Daniel. Daniel currently looks like the thin Daniel that fought Jinho on the shopping canon, but he already has more muscles and taller, but shorter than Zack. For more information about height you can search the wiki. Jinho became taller and stronger. His weak personality was going away more and more since he spent the majority of his time with Allied. He became more brave, so he didn't have the Accord aura of before. There's more to work on, thought, but that's a good beginning. The 4 students continued to train every day on the morning before school, and after. Every time the weights became easy to wear, Daniel would change them. Doing this, the group grew extremely fast. Jinho now was strong like Zack at the beginning of canon, while Zack and Vasco were stronger than their canon counterparts that were on the James Lee Arch where Hudsonon and his crew appeared. Don't underestimate their strength, because Daniel trained their foundation, so when they will train with their masters they will grow exponentially. Daniel taught Jinho the art of hood fighting, in simple terms. Spam! Jinho punched the ground while Daniel jumped away. The eyeglasses user broke the asphalt. He looked at Daniel irritated while seeing the lil body with his pinky on his nose. His face one of boredom. Jinho said, "Now fuck that." He grabbed a piece of iron and speeded towards Daniel. He didn't realize, but the Korean boy was becoming more and more hood-like. Daniel continued to dodge with extreme ease while making fun faces at Jinho, further irritating him. Suddenly Daniel grabbed the piece of iron and flipped Jinho whole, using Aikido. Jinho smashed on the ground and Daniel smiled, dodging a kick at the throat. Jinho was using the ground as a support and unleashed many kicks that Daniel deflected. Then Daniel distanced himself and applauded, "Clap clap, good job. Never let them know your next move, I'm satisfied." He praised Jinho, who scratched his head embarrassingly. He didn't say it, but he was really grateful at how Daniel improved his life. The lil body helped him with his family, improving their relationship. Daniel was one that always said, "Family before everything. So if you betray me for family I will not be mad. But I will still beat the fuck out of you. Thanks." He now was strong enough to protect himself. "Good, now it's time for you to go on a mission," Daniel said seriously, and Jinho paid close attention. "Please visit my Patreon. You can subscribe even for free. Leave a review if you like this novel. Patreon Crow's Works." While with the training with Vasco was going well, the Lego piece was improving and gaining fighting experience, since he and Jinho were the ones with less experience in that regard. Vasco trained, yes, but he didn't fight much, and on Lookism experience was essential. Boom! Again! Daniel shouted with his arms crossed. He was currently training Vasco and Zack. Boom! Zack! Breathe correctly! He shouted again. Vasco was currently punching and kicking Zack's body. His objective to learn how to cause the most pain and damage, while having speed and power. While Zack, who was without a shirt showing his packed muscles, was gritting his teeth. He continued to tank all the hits. The boxer was building his foundation for the iron boxing. Boom! Again, but use your knee now. Since Vasco's strength increased incredibly after hitting iron all these days. His blows were not light. And Zack, with the continuous beating, became more resilient and durable. Daniel made sure to train his students on stretching too, to train their joints. When he said that he was preparing their foundation, he wasn't joking. The plot continued, and Daniel met his mother too when she visited. Since the clothing brand was booming, the money wasn't low. So he was able to purchase a good apartment for his mother, and managed to retire her. Her tears of joy flooded the house. Oh yeah, he bought 2 other houses too, for both of his bodies, since it was more convenient. Daniel continued to refine his fighting style, while reaching a PhD level PF knowledge on a wide area of subjects. He even made a game for PC. Do you know about Project Zomboid? Well, that, but with better graphics and items. If you want more Game Maker content, let me know, that I can make many chapters about only that. But since this is a Lookism fanfiction, you readers want to see fighting, so I will only do Game Maker chapters if you ask. Beaming face with smiling eyes. The game made a success since Daniel made NPCs with artificial intelligence who can communicate with the players and completely change the game functions. The game supports many languages since it means more money. The game is popular all over the world, so money is not a problem anymore. Daniel befriended Jay, and he became an ally that will help when allied will need it. So the festival arc came, and Daniel was excited as fuck to mess with Gun. Hey Vin Jean, you got accepted in, okay? A girl asked while looking at Vin Jean. Whoa, is that where Kim Won-jun is? It's great. A glazer added, making Vin ego rise through the roof. Well, I have my skills, he bragged. You're grat. The same girl of before said. Vin smiked and asked, am I not better than the transfer student? He looked at Duke and walked towards him. But only I got accepted, he added, making the class look at Duke, calling himself a rapper. The class laughed. Did the audition as well? Hee awesome. Duke remained silent while looking at Vin, who kicked him, shouting, ugh. So embarrassing. I was nervous you might say hello to me. Why did you go there? He continued to kick him with hidden emotions. A girl looked at the bullying and said to the two lakeys, hey, stop him. The laughing fool with the hat worn backwards laughed, not caring about Duke. Hee, leave him, that sucker. Hee. Meanwhile, the other one with the cap worn normally shook his head. He wasn't a fan of this, but he could not do much. Mary Kim got on the front desk and looked at the noisy class. She smiled and talked. The students turned their heads and paid attention to her. Guys, we have the candidates that will perform at the festival. Make an applause at Zhang Jia and Vin Jean. She exclaimed excitedly at the class, who erupted into cheers. The two guys smiled and Vin Jean said, the president of the agency is coming to see me. I should put on a great performance. He looked at the blonde and introduced Zhang Jia. Duke, who was on the back excluded by everyone, looked at the guys in envy. I'm envious. He wanted an opportunity like everyone else. But with his appearance, the task was extremely difficult. Unknown to everyone, Daniel was outside the class behind the wall listening to everything. What a disgrace to your teacher. He shook his head in disappointment. It really hurt him seeing this fool ruining the reputation of his glorious King Song Ji-yuk. He made up his mind to beat the fuck out of that MF. He walked away, already having decided to follow Duke for the stall episode. Duke was at his grandma's stall after school. Did you sell a lot, grandma? He asked, smiling with affection. Oh my grandson, did you finish school? She greeted him with happiness. Are you hungry? You should eat some. She invited him, but Duke refused, knowing their financial situation. No, it's for selling. How could I eat it? He scratched his head and the grandma insisted. Ho. It's okay. The duo got interrupted by a voice that caused Duke Ma to drop. Hey Duke? It was Vin Jean with his two lakeys. He said, is your house this way? He asked casually while the lakey on his left asked with mockery, is this your grandma? Hello, hee. The trio walked towards the stall, and Duke grandma greeted them warmly. Oh my, are you friends with Duke? She asked. Yes, we're in the same class. Ho, be nice to Duke. Sure, hee. Fuck. What do they want now? Duke cursed in his head while sweating. His grandma smiled and said, you must be hungry, have some. The three guys accepted and begun to eat without care. It's really great. They ate everything, dirtying the stall. And after all of this, Duke's grandma was still smiling and welcoming them. You are eating well. Eat lots and be nice to Duke, she said, and they nodded. Don't worry. She wrapped the leftover food and gave it to them, and they accepted. After they walked away, Duke looked at the stall. They ate everything. Grandma must sell those. A guy came in front of the stall and looked at the grandma. Oh, young lad, do you want some? She asked, and Daniel shook his head. Thanks, I'm not hungry, but here. I will pay for what those fools took. He took out his wallet. No, you don't need to. She refused while Duke looked at Daniel with surprise. Daniel said, shut up and take this before I kidnap you. This stunned the grandma, who didn't expect this. Daniel placed the money on the table and said, the next time don't be gentle with assholes. He nodded towards Duke and walked away. The three bullies were walking and laughing. Ha. Did you see how ugly she was? Yes. And she even gave us the food for free, haha. Vin Jean laughed and said, no one would buy that shit from the smelly old woman. He mocked and threw the bag containing the food. But before the bag could touch the ground, a hand grabbed it. What a disappointment. the voice said, causing the three bullies to turn around. Daniel, Vin said while glaring at Daniel, who was holding the bag and eating the food. He still remembers how Daniel humiliated him the last time. He looked deeply at him. He really has lost weight. Daniel placed the bag calmly on the ground and looked at the trio. Is it fun? He asked. Fun what? The Lakey asked, and Daniel looked at him. It's fun bullying the weaker? Ruining the only source of income of an old lady? So tell me, is it fun? He asked, his face serious. The guy with the hat worn backwards smiled and answered. Ha ha ha. Obviously, is it fun? There are only lol dash. Boom. He didn't finish his phrase. That 1 second he was talking, and the other he and you now were smashed on the wall, knocked out with multiple fractures. Now Daniel was behind a shocked Vin, who distanced himself and looked at him with utter seriousness. Daniel turned his head slightly and looked at Zach with one eye. Even after all what your teacher taught you, this shocked Vin even more. How? How did you know? He asked with a raised voice. He thought that no one besides Mary knew about his past. His emotions begun to surface. Daniel continued. Look at you, wasting your time fooling around and bullying the weaker instead of training and seeking revenge against the killer of Kim Soo-jin. That name triggered heavily Vin, who rushed towards Daniel. Don't say that name. He screamed and tackled Daniel. Spam. Huh. His eyes opened wide and he raised his head. There stood Daniel unmoving even after Vin grabbed him. He looked down at Vin with indifference, like looking at an ant. Do you think that with your feeble will you can move me? He grabbed Vin's throat and removed his glasses. He looked at his eyes. Polychoria. You let the opinions of others pull you down, and with a weak will you escape from your problems, hating them and being ashamed, he said with disapproval. Even though this is a gift of God, you kept it hidden. He pocketed the glasses. Vin lost it and punched Daniel, who grabbed his punch and flipped him upside down, unleashing a punch on his face, slamming him on the ground. Boom ga. You know, the killer of your love is still alive, and he never stopped training. Instead you are here wasting your time bullying the weak. Fool. But don't worry. I will straighten you up in honor of that man. You know, the killer of your love is still alive, and he never stopped training. Instead you are here wasting your time bullying the weak. Fool. But don't worry. I will straighten you up in honor of that man, Daniel said with indifference while looking down at Vin Jin. Vin Jin's eyes opened in shock, and he looked at Daniel incredulously. He didn't believe it. He was sure he killed Tae-jin. For those that don't know, you can search information on the Lookism wiki. But in simple terms, Vin, when he was on Chongliang, where his master died, he had a girl that he loved. She got killed by his rival Tae-jin. I think the two are brothers since they are identical. Skull Tae-jin is just a fake nigga. So when Tae-jin returned from the arena, I don't remember the name, but he was essentially kidnapped by Gu Kim, an extremely strong character at the level of past James Lee the Pink Head before he fought Big Daniel. Gu kidnapped Tae-jin because he was sent by Charles Choi, basically the final boss, to retrieve the red paper, his weakness, so they kidnapped Tae-jin and placed him in that arena, where he will need to constantly fight or die, I think. Gaining a massive amount of strength. After a year, Tae-jin was able to get some free time, because he lied saying that he knew where the red paper was, thus gaining the opportunity to visit Chongliang. There he and Vin fought for the Chonglian head seat. Vin won no diff because he was constantly fighting to protect Chongliang from the other crews. His potential is immense when he doesn't hide his eye and uses Jin Mujin Seryum, his father, who is stated to be equal to Gaprion Kim, the strongest of the 0th generation. Debate me. Mujin Seryum is in simple terms a technique where the user grabs directly the bones of his opponent, breaking them or just grabbing and throwing, dealing massive amount of damage. Cool as fuck technique. After Vin defeated Tae-jin, he threw him on the sea thinking that he killed him. But he gets knocked down instantly by Gu, who jumped down and saved Tae-jin. Now Tae-jin in the present time is strong as fuck, easily clapping Vin in the latest chapters on Workers Arc, canon story. This is a simple explanation from my memory, so if you want more information go on the wiki, or read the manhwa chap 500 to 501. Vin shouted while getting up and Daniel dodged a punch. Bullshit. I killed him. How is possible that he is still alive? He was sure that Tae-jin died. He didn't want to believe a possibility that he wasted all of this time while that bastard was still alive. Daniel cracked his neck and hands. He began to stretch his whole body and articulation, while beginning to breathe in a specific pattern, thus making his blood flow efficiently and relaxing his whole body. He looked at the unstable Vin and said, "Do you think it was a casualty that you passed out the moment Taejin was no more visible? And no body was found?" Vin, his tone with disapproval. Vin frowned and took a deep breath. He calmed down and his gaze became serious. He took his kudo stance and answered, "You're right. I was foolish, so I will just need to make you spill out all of your information." This was a calm Vin, the strongest state of his, and his aura changed coming back his prime. Daniel nodded, showing his respect for his control. "Good. Let's see if you're worthy to become an ally. And if I win, you gotta introduce me to Mary," he said while taking the Kyokushin karate stance. Veins appeared on his whole body, then they compacted with the muscles. Vin raised a brow at the mention of Mary, but he wasn't surprised. Even thought he saw her as a sister. He knew perfectly how attractive she was. The two looked at each other, ignoring the hiding Duke, who was watching with awe, something inside of him rising. "And it's not the shied hero, pause, no homo." Vin asked a question he had on his mind for all of this time. "How did you knew it? You weren't there." "He might seem a stupid guy, he is, but he is pretty smart." Daniel smiled and said, "I have a power called my business. Have you ever heard of it?" Vin frowned, understanding that Daniel was not going to disclose his secret. This was no low-quality novel. Glazing myself, smiling face with sunglasses. Swip. Daniel disappeared and appeared in front of Vin. His right hand on Vin's heart with an inch punch. Vin deflected it with his right hand, opening his right side. Daniel took that opportunity, and with his left hand he punched there. Pam! Vin with his soul durability blocked that attack, but taking a sharp breath with pain. Daniel punches weren't light. Vin immediately grabbed the collar of Daniel and flipped him with the intention of slamming the guy on the ground, but with pure technique and equilibrium, Danny twisted his body and unleashed a spinning kick toward Vin's face, which he blocked. The two separated and observed each other for any openings. Daniel only needed 2 weeks to reach Vin prime strength, and with his experience he was an extremely difficult opponent for Vin. The two looked at each other. "Don't dive in," Daniel said, and kicked towards the lower area of Vin, who tried to block it, but the kick suddenly changed course, and he kicked the top area. He used the Brazilian kick. Spam. Vin took the opportunity to speed and grab Daniel's body, while his leg was raised, thus making him lose his balance. Vin grabbed his chest flesh, and using Jin Mujin Suryurm, he grabbed the bones. Daniel's eyes widened, and he flexed instantly his muscles, making Vin grip lose strength. But the man managed to raise him off the ground and spam. Daniel got smashed on the ground, breaking it. Vin smiled and looked at Daniel, but what he saw was a punch on his face that sent him flying. Daniel got up while spitting blood and cleaning his mouth. He looked at his ruined simple shirt and bleeding chest. "I need to train my bones more. I will use Vin for that." His bones hurt as fuck, but he smiled and appeared in front of the getting up Vin in Goku Ultra Instinct style. The two looked eyes, and Daniel moved his body on the air and unleashed a powerful kick on Vin's head, who gritted his teeth. Ugh! His brain vibrating from the blow.
The two looked eyes, and Daniel moved his body on the air and unleashed a powerful kick on Vin's head, who gritted his teeth. Ugh! His brain vibrating from the blow. Daniel grabbed the shoulders of Vin and gave him double knee kicks on the back of his head. Vin's body was full of veins, and he grabbed Daniel's leg with incredible strength and slammed him on the ground, breaking the asphalt and his leg bones. Daniel's eyes widened, losing momentarily focus, giving Vin the time to raise him and slamming his head again and again. Spam. 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 The man with two bodies was bleeding on the head and leg, while Vin stayed on top with heavy breaths. "Thanks to you, I will be able to feel it," Daniel said weakly, making Vin raise a brow in doubt. "What? The threshold between life and death." His voice becoming even more weak the more seconds passed. Vin's eyes widened in alert, feeling a massive treat nearby. By pure instinct he punched towards Daniel's damaged chest. Stam! He only destroyed some asphalt. Vin looked below, but Daniel was nowhere to be found. He immediately got up and looked around. Feeling an immense pressure behind his back, he turned around and saw Daniel there, his back clearly visible with the ruined t-shirt. Daniel turned slightly his head and looked at Vin, bringing him chills on his spine. What? He asked in shock. Daniel's eyes were different from before. the eye was pitch black with a white pupil. Daniel walked towards Vin with calmness, his every step precise and his breathing perfect. Every single step brought even more pressure to Vin, who was in extreme alert. Something tells him that when Daniel previously asked him to not die, he meant this. Vin decided to attack first. He speeded towards Daniel and grabbed him, but he only felt air and the silhouette slowly disappearing, his eyes widening, feeling a hand on his head. Daniel was on top of him with a hand on the head and the legs on the air. Ha! This was all Vin managed to say before he found himself on the ground with immense pain on his head, his eyes losing their luster for a moment, his mouth open but without sounds. This was the strongest blow he felt in his life. His master never hit him like this. His master always held back, that's why. He turned his head on the ground and with his side eyes he glimpsed a raised leg, so he immediately moved away without hesitation. Boom. A crater was formed, showing that he could have died there. What he doesn't know was that Daniel never attached to kill since he wanted to recruit him, but the machine in front of him? Don't care about that. This is the Ultra Instinct Daniel. When you go into UI, your brain basically into its survival fight mode in order to allow the person to be protected even though they are unconscious. This makes the brain work in like an autopilot mode, and due to this, all thoughts and inhibitions you have get turned off, and your survival senses are increased. This in turn makes the person in UI see anyone around them as a threat, and due to it being in fight mode rather than flight mode, will cause the body to attack said threats regardless of who they might be. The body will also target the strongest opponent overall first. UI, because it's running everything on max and kinda like turning off the brain's inhibitors, in order to conserve energy, will scale the effort and strength used by the body to just slightly above the person who they're fighting. Because of this, the person in UI will actively get either stronger or weaker depending on the opponent, but there is a limit to how strong one can get with UI, and that's all depending upon the actual body of whoever has UI. A person in UI, because they're unconscious, can't learn new things. The only exception being if the person in UI has the copy skill. But it's unconfirmed, as only Daniel has been able to pull it off, and we don't know if the body was copying or if it just already knew those moves too. It'll only access data from what the body is already capable of doing, and just using that to the amount of strength required to win. Meaning a boxer in UI can't start doing kicks or grapples, because it's not what the boxer has learnt. However, it will be using the boxing skills to the highest ability the body has been able to reach overall. Meaning that a lesser boxer in UI can't outbox a more skilled boxer who's not in UI. A person can only enter UI if they are unconscious and if they either had a strong will to fight prior to going unconscious and or were in a near-death situation. A person in UI can exit out of that state. They can exit out of that state by either the person waking up, passing out, being injected with a special drug, or getting knocked out. There is also the ability to be in UI but have the control of it, thus removing the weakness of strength limiter. The only characters that have this ability are Gunpark and his dad. There are only 4 ways to beat someone in UI. You either outfight them and knock them out. You either inject them with a drug. You either lower your power level so they match your lower level, and then make your power go high and beat them before they adjust to your new power. And by far the easiest way is to knock them out mid-UI transformation. Vin took his kudo stance and looked at Daniel seriously. "I will not lose, Daniel," he said while bleeding on the head. Daniel tilted his head a little and looked at his hand, showing that the consciousness of Daniel is slowly taking control thanks to his boons. The two ran towards each other with the intention to take down the other.
Daniel threw the same punch that defeated James at Vin. The difference was that he didn't have the same strength of the second body. Spam! Vin placed his arms to block the attack with great difficulty and immense pain. From the power of the punch, his body rose in the air, and Daniel turned his body and unleashed a backside kick on Vin's right side, sending him slamming on the ground repeatedly. Ugh! Chuff! Vin shouted with difficulty while caressing his right side. That blow really hurt. He looked up and saw Daniel in the air with a leg raised, his black eyes looking at him indifferently. With a burst of will, Vin tanked the kick and grabbed Daniel's leg. He gritted his teeth in pain and slammed Daniel on the ground. He punched with force on Daniel's body, while the lil body continued to parry or deflect the attacks. Suddenly, Daniel punched the right side of Vin in the same place of before. The punch made Vin take a sharp breath. Daniel took the opportunity and moved himself by jumping away and slitting on the ground. Meanwhile, Vin glared at Daniel and cursed, "Bitch!" He took a deep breath and ran towards Daniel, who stayed in place. The two began to punch each other and tank the hits. It became a battle of attrition. This was strange because the UI normally would not do this sort of thing. And by looking at Daniel's face, he was smiling. Daniel was smiling while receiving a punch directly on the face and giving another back without hesitation. The two young men were all bloodied up, one smiling like a crazy MF while the other with a face full of veins. It was clear he was pissed off. The two moved around the small road while unleashing continuous attacks. But by looking with an experienced eye, one could see that the two were improving continuously. Vin was able to tank stronger attacks, while his grips became even more dangerous. Daniel's body moved with extreme precision, easily dodging mini attacks and tanking the others. His punches always damaging more at every hit. His smile and eyes were showing that the consciousness behind was taking control, but the UI remained. The two were pushing each other to the limits, continuously growing stronger. But it was clear that Daniel got the advantage. If Vin grew 3, Daniel grew 3, then 5, and then 10. After some minutes, every attack of Vin was rendered useless, and he couldn't bear the punches and kicks of Daniel. The guy was improving at a speed that Vin could not keep up. Then Daniel stopped and distanced himself, his face neutral. Vin looked at him in vigilance while breathing with difficulty. Daniel opened his mouth and said, "Vin, fighting you made me realize that you're not at your peak. It's comprehensible, but now you can't help me improve much anymore for now." His eyes still in UI mode, showing that he was in complete control. He mastered the Ultra Instinct. Daniel cracked his neck and looked at the sky. He was really enjoying this sensation. So this is how Gun feels, ah. No wonder he is so arrogant and fearless. The amount of stamina and power. He feels it's impressive. He can perfectly control his body and bring 100% of his power instantly. He now doesn't have the UI weakness anymore. He can even turn off the pain receptors on his body, thus making him fight even better. He looked back at Vin, who was barely standing, and said, "Join Allied and we will help you in taking down Taejin." "No, you will do it. I will just give you the right training." He has his hand in front, towards Vin, who looked at it. Vin thought at all the pain and remorse he felt at seeing the photos of Sujin Kim, his love, and Song Ji-yuk, his late master. At their funeral and all the emotions he felt, he really wanted to kill Taejin. Vin walked toward Daniel, and the two were face to face, their height similar, but Vin was slightly taller. Daniel grew in this fight. Strange, but this is Lookism. Taejin is mine to kill. Vin Jean stated, not accepting a no. And Daniel smiled, since for him it's not a problem. He nodded. "No problem, but you need to take orders, or I'ma beat you up again," he said seriously, and his black eyes showed no lies. Vin took Daniel's hand, and a firm handshake was done. A new member joined the newly formed crew. That no one still knew, but they will, oh they will. Fuck. They are monsters. Duke sweated all over his body, while looking at the two bloodied guys while they were in a handshake. The surroundings were pretty much destroyed. Duke never thought someone can be this strong. Well, who can blame him? He is a normal civilian, and they rarely see something like this. The next day, we can see the classic 4 comrades in front of the school. 3 were looking at Daniel, all bandaged up, in confusion and questions. "What the fuck happened and why are you taller?" Zach asked while pointing at Vin. "And why the fuck he is here?" Vin pointed at himself. His head was all white, bandaged up, and with the black glasses on his head. But those were normal dark glasses. He was able to see better. His body was bandaged too, more on the right side. "Who, me?" he asked, dumbly, pissing off Zach even more, while Jinho laughed and Vasco looked at them in confusion. Vin is now a new member of Allied. He is one of us now. And yesterday we fought as a greeting tradition. Daniel explained simply while the students were looking at the group strangely. These guys always come to school with some injury, and always laugh it off. And now there is another one. So he is a friend? Vasco asked with a smile, while giving Vin a handshake, who reciprocated. "Yes, he is Vasco. Nice to meet you, Vin." Jinho said while patting Vasco back, and giving a handshake to Vin too. The 4 eyes was now taller, and he was a little shorter than Daniel, his build proportioned. Daniel clapped his hands and said, "God. Now we will train together." He wanted to use Vin to increase the crew durability, and then go with Zach to the monk after the festival. "Vin, what are you doing here?" A feminine soft voice said, causing the guys to turn their heads, and there stood Mary Kim with her classic pose, and the Chanliang jacket. Daniel eyes shone. "HM? Mary, nothing, I was talking with them dash," Vin was explaining, but before he could finish, Daniel disappeared and reappeared in front of Mary. He smiled and with the most handsome voice he could muster he presented himself. "Hello, I'm Daniel, the new friend of Vin. He has talked to me about you. It's a pleasure." He shook her hand while Mary looked at him weirdly. She gave Vin questioning looks while the guys laughed loudly. Gahaha, who would have thought that the great mad dog would try to flirt with a woman? Gahaha, Zack laughed while venting all of the frustration he accumulated from all of the torture from Daniel. Jinho and Vin turned their heads while holding their laugh. Meanwhile, Vasco was crying with pain. "I too want to fall in love. What a lonely sharp Lego piece." Veins appeared on Daniel's neck and face, with a massive tick mark. Mary looked at the guys and then at Danye. She understood what happened. She shook her head and said, "Ha! I'm going to class." She turned around and Vin followed while having his hand on his mouth, laughing and pointing at Daniel, who was throwing him sharp glares, like a hawk. Daniel shook his head and walked towards the classroom. "Whatever. I'm not gonna lick her shoes like a dog." He decided to take it easy and let fate do its job. Time flies and the days passed. The allied crew with the new addition Vin continued their training like always. Daniel stopped wearing weights, and now he punches and kicks everything that is hard. He broke many of his bones, but this world laws are weird, so the next day he is healed. Or his body is just too good. After discovering this loophole, he ordered the guys every day, bringing massive improvement to all of them. He made Vin break Zack bones all over his body to increase his durability. The poor boxer didn't have a day of rest. Daniel made Vin only hurt his muscles at the limit that they could support it, and did the same with the bones, always increasing the pressure. Now Zack can tank the attacks of everyone apart from Daniel and Vin's full power. But it's a good improvement. Vasco needed to work on his speed and intelligence, so Daniel made him do the same routine that Zack did for the speed. And for the intelligence, he just needed to learn common sense and tactics. He was strong enough to give Vin a good fight, and with his improved speed his Muay Thai is more dangerous. His kicks at full power can break trees easily. He and Zack are rivals now, since only when Vasco uses his Muay Thai kicks is he able to damage Zack. While the boxer is able to easily surpass Vasco in speed, his power is lower than Vasco. Jinho has become really good at weapon handling and improvisation, after Daniel made him go all over the city to fight small gangs alone without nothing. The Four Eyes needed to adapt and use what he could find to win. Swyish boom! Daniel jumped, dodging the combined attacks of Zack's punch on the ground and Vasco's heavy kick. He was in base mode while smiling. He tilted his head, letting a sharp wood piece pass on his left side of his head. He rotated and kicked Jinho on the head, sending him smashing on the ground. The little bastard really likes to use sharp objects for sneak attacks. "Hey, little bastard, do you want to kill me?" He cursed at Jinho, who was already up, and ran towards him. Daniel landed and punched towards him, but his punch was blocked by Zack with his shoulder while smiling. "Hee hee, we got you." Daniel's eyes widened, and by the corner, he could see Vin on his personal area going for a tackle. Pam! Ugh! Daniel gritted his teeth while taking a knee kick square on the face by Vasco. "These niggas are jumping me." He got pissed and activated his hood avatar state. "Now fact that. On my mama you got me fucked up. On my face you got me fucked up." His eyes became black and he grabbed Vin's face. And using Jin Mujin Serum, along with Aikido, he flipped Vin and smashed him on the ground, creating a crater. Vin coughed blood while saying, "Fuck. You bitch." And passing out, Zack begun to sweat, but Daniel grabbed Vasco's leg and smashed him on top of Zack again, knocking them out. Only the poor Jinho remained. Hee hee. He laughed while sweating. The black eyes did the slow walk in gun style. Jinho took a deep breath and decided to use Kyokushin karate. His hands were in different positions, his right punch on the back side, and his left punch, and the left front. This stance was different from the original. This was a technique he developed with a sole goal: dealing the most amount of damage possible. It was clearly visible from his rough hands, signifying intense training in that area. Oh! Daniel raised his brow, his interest piqued. Jinho immediately ran towards Daniel with high speed and punched towards Daniel's belly. The avatar instinct warned him, so Daniel decided to dodge, causing Jinho punch to land on the big tree behind. Crom! Not much noise was made, but Daniel's eyes were fixed on the tree trunk. He narrowed them and looked back at Jinho, who was sweating, showing great fatigue. The place Four Eyes hit was deformed. The part of the tree became a spiral. But that wasn't the problem. Daniel headed behind, and his eyes widened. The back of the tree was destroyed. TF. Daniel did not expect Jinho to create a technique able to greatly damage the inside. But it seems that he is not strong enough to use it repeatedly. If he masters it, he will become a top tier on this verse. Suddenly his face became serious, and he appeared in front of Jinho, surprising him. Daniel said with utter seriousness, "Use this technique only as the last resort. You can't still control it." His tone not leaving space, and Jinho nodded. "Good." Daniel nodded, and then turned around while looking at the sky. "Tomorrow it's the festival." Lil Daniel POV. It's currently late evening, nearly night. The sky was becoming dark while the sun was escaping from my view. I was currently looking at a poster attacked on a pole. This poster was an ad from my school. They were inviting people at the festival. Now thinking about it, I still haven't talked with Duke. I struggled my shoulders. I have dealt with Vin already, so he will not bully Duke anymore or I'ma clap him again. It's crazy that I've reincarnated before GTA 6. Haha, I laughed with little sadness. I really miss my sister and family. Yeah, we sometimes had some arguments, but it's life. And deep down I deeply care for them. But now I'm here and I have no way to come back. Hehe. My friend's gonna be sad as fuck, haha. Especially that Ben 10 nerd Momo. Who knows what he is doing now? He was the one with the most knowledge about fiction all over our friend group. But his memory was trash, haha. Talking about memory. Thanks to these boons I remember perfectly the parts that I read about the PTJ lore. But I almost know nothing of Manager Kim or Questism. Who know what stats I have. Fuck. There's Mana Drain too. I need to deal with the North. I will send Jinho. CK. I'm not doing the classic villain mistake. I will go there myself and go all out. No room for arrogance. I want to see what happens when I kill a system user. I'm currently walking towards the shop where the Canon Fat Daniel worked. Since tomorrow it's the festival. This means that Duke will be there, probably Jinho too, since the two are friends. Yes, friends, I don't know how, but it happened. Oh. Yeah, there will be Crystal too. I want to meet her and mess with her. Who knows, she might call gun. A smile appeared on my face. We can fight sooner. Gahaha. With excitement I ran towards the shop. I came and see the duo drinking while chatting with each other. I looked at Duke and my brows raised. He lost weight. Not much, but I can see the difference. He is less ugly too. Incredible how this world works. You just need to train, and you will become more handsome. The two noticed me and Jinho waved. Yo! I smiled and dapped this nigga up. I don't know how, but this MF learned some black habits. What's up, man? He said, and I dapped the dazed Duke too while sitting down and taking some chips from Jinho. Nothing, bro. Just wanted to chill around. I see that you're with Duke. Exited for tomorrow? I talked while filling my mouth of chips. I love them. Jinho nodded while hiding the chips away, bastard. He looked at Duke and said, yeah, we were talking about which song he wanted to rap. This made the rapper scratch his head and embarrassed. I smiled and said, that's cool. When you will become famous, let me meet some models. I said while laughing. I was joking about the models, obviously. Duke looked at me surprised and slowly nodded. Jinho elbowed him lightly while making a head movement, thus waking him up. Yes. I will. I shook my head. He still needs to work on his mentality. I see that you've begun to train. Well done. I complimented him while Jinho raised his chest with pride. I'm sure he helped. Duke looked surprised since no one noticed it. But I was able to since I'm cool as fuck. Yeah, I've been training with the help of Jinho. He has been really helpful. Like I thought. I looked at Jinho, who was scratching his nose arrogantly. He is becoming even more cocky the more time passes. Yeah, I should send him to someone strong, so he will learn his lesson. I looked at Duke and said, good, so you can train with us too. You will need a good appearance if you want to rise even higher on the rapper industry. And some strength is necessary too. Let's not talking about the thrill of fighting. I said with stars on my eyes. It's always like this when I talk about fighting. Duke begins to sweat while Jinho is looking at him with a look of pity. Duke's fate is already sealed. I looked up down the road and see Crystal coming towards the shop. I smile and get up. Guys, I have something to do. See you tomorrow. I walk away while waving at them. The two nodded and continued their conversation, while I make my way towards Daddy's precious daughter. I lower my presence and enter inside the shop after her. She was walking around when she stopped and raised her hand to take a packet of chips. I grinned and took them before her, surprising her. She looked at me with my grinning face and said, "I was taking them." She frowned in annoyance. I struggled and responded, "Too slow, now they are mine." Her frown deepened while I walked away. She decided to ignore me and reach for another packet. And guess what happened? Hee hee. I grabbed that too. She glared at me, her face being filled with veins. I swear I saw her taking the "Help Me Daddy Maharaja" pose. She took a deep breath and looked at me. "What do you want? Are you hitting at me?" she asked while getting on a fighting stance. I shook my head and make the classic PTJ Korean funny face. "Hell no, you ugly as fuck." This stunned her while I turned and walked away. She looked around asking herself if this was a prank. I sincerely feel sorry for her. I just want to piss off Gun, but I need her help for that. I will ask for forgiveness another time. She then calmed down and reached for the last packet of chips, and I just grabbed them again. Her eyes become red in rage. She took a boxing stance and threw a straight towards my smiling face. What happened after? Nothing, I just dodged, leaving an after image behind. The image head got blown, leaving the fading body. She looked around in surprise, not expecting this level of speed. Then a voice came behind her on her ear. "Don't move, before I clap that." Her body trembled, and she immediately sprinted outside towards the parked car. I laughed loudly while walking out. I looked over and saw her talking to a man dressed in black with sweat all over her face. The man was tall, with black hair and dark glasses on. His body was emanating an impressive aura. I smiled crazily while looking at the man I have been waiting for all of this time. No diddy. Gun. I'm currently driving towards a random shop where Crystal says that she loves the chips there. And since I'm her bodyguard, I need to protect her. I parked at the end of the street with a good vision of the shop. I looked at Crystal, who gave me a mischievous smile. "Gun. You stay here," she declared with conviction. Huh. What a pain in the ass. She always refuses to be accompanied inside of this shop. For the NT time. "Let me come with you, Crystal. This kid." She shook her head and immediately bolted outside, while slamming the door. I opened the door and remained seated. I lit a cigarette and relaxed. I really love how calming these are. I stay relaxed for some minutes until I hear frantic steps towards me. I turn my head and see a panicked Crystal, who was sweating all over her body. My gaze immediately sharpens and I get out. I want to see who dares to scare her like this. Today I'm gonna kill someone. I walked towards her, and she immediately sprinted even more towards me. She immediately began shooting words at a speed not comprehensible. I tap her shoulders to calm her down and she visibly relaxes. "What happened?" I ask her. She immediately looked back towards the shop and says, "A pervert wanted to molest me. He continued to mess with me by grabbing every packet of chips I wanted. And when I tried to defend myself, he appeared behind me while threatening me to stay still, or he would have done something horrible." She shoot with panic. Veins appear on my face. I'ma kill this guy. I turn my head and see a man coming arrogantly towards me. I narrow my eyes and walk towards him. We then stood face to face while I looked down at this ant. He looked up and made a weird face while having his pinky inside his nose. He moved his face closer and said with utter mockery, "H? Who the fuck are you?" His Asian face was contorting in a weird way. Only by seeing it I wanted to just snap his head. He crouched while placing his hands on his legs and tilted his face like a low-level gangster. "Huh? The dog ate your dick? This is why you can't talk." The veins on my face increased while a massive tick mark appeared on my forehead. He got up and moved his face inches from my face. "Bitch-ass fool. US meal ESHIT. His saliva splashing on my face, I decided, I will kill this dude. He walked around me towards Crystal, and with a perverted face he said while moving his hand closer to the scared girl, "You come here, lil girl dash." I didn't let him finish. I grabbed his arm and used Aikido. I flipped him up ready to unleash a punch on his ugly face. But to my surprise he grabbed my arm with the arm that I grabbed, and with a precise and incredible technique, he flipped me too, perfectly replicating my move while improving it. I found the sky and the ground in different positions. I looked down at the sky, and saw his face with a crazy smile, and his 2 inches from my chest. SBM. Author POV. Daniel was having the time of his life. First, he messed with the arrogant Crystal, and now he was on top of a stun gun, in Shigaraki style. His foot was firmly pressed on the man's chest. He gotta save this shit. He immediately took a photo of this, making Gun's eyes to widen. Daniel sticked out his tongue while mocking Gun, and immediately jumped away, narrowing, dodging a dangerous grab towards his leg. He looked at the getting up Gun. Daniel observed his body, and noted that he was unscathed from the previous blow. Well, I expected it. Gun was silent. He took his glasses off and gave them to Crystal. His black eyes looked into Daniel with murderous intent. Daniel immediately saved the photo on a folder online. Gun walked towards him slowly while cracking his neck. Daniel smiled and walked towards him. Let's see how strong he is. Daniel, though, while punching towards Gun's chest with a great portion of his strength. Gun looked at the attack and took it head-on. Pam. Daniel sweated while looking up. Gun, indifferent and cold eyes were locked at him. His punch didn't move the man. Did I just fucked up? Damn. These things are slowing me down. Daniel tried to move away, but Gun just grabbed his collar and knee kicked him on the chest, making Daniel's eyes to lose focus momentarily. Ugh. Fuck. Daniel did not expect Gun attack to hurt so much. But with an ease he grabbed the leg and grabbed the bones with strength, surprising Gun, who flexed his leg muscles to offset the damage. Daniel took the small window of opportunity and punched Gun's chin, making his head turn. Then he distanced himself while smiling and cleaning the line of blood from his mouth. Gun caressed his jaw and looked at Daniel. He smiled and said, "Interesting. I thought you were some random fodder, but it seems I was wrong." He immediately speeded towards Daniel and kicked towards his left side. Daniel, knowing this move, feigned ignorance and placed a hand there. Gun immediately changed the course and kicked towards Daniel's head, who took the opportunity where the delay occurred and tackled Gun mid-kick. Using the Jin Mujin Siryurm, he came behind Gun and grabbed his ribs, and with his maximum force he slammed Gun on the ground. The man placed his leg on the ground, thus negating the attack, and with superior strength he raised Daniel while punching his side using karate. Daniel flew towards the wall. Boom! Gun smiled, expecting more from this guy. Daniel, who was on the wall with the rubble on top of him, got up while dusting the dirt and dust. He looked at Gun seriously while having blood on his head. He walked towards Gun slowly and said, "I'm not taking this disrespect," he stated while Gun smiled in mockery. He opened his mouth to speak, but Daniel took off some special weights on his body that he personally requested thanks to the money he gained from the business. Daniel drops the weights all over his body on the ground. The moment the weights touched the asphalt, it broke. Gun eyes widened while a punch appeared inches from his face. Daniel was serious. The moment Daniel took off the weights, he felt his body feeling light like a feather. It's been weeks since he has been continuously increasing the weights, only taking them off to shower or shit. He felt his body reinvigorating. Taking a deep breath, he looked at Gun with seriousness. He didn't like how this MF picked him up like a child, so he decided that he will make him pay. He stepped on the ground, and his perception got pushed to the max. The birds on the air, the insects around, the flies near a dump, and Crystal near the car. All of them slowed down to a level where they seemed frozen in time. Incredible how this world bodies work, amazing. With a simple push he left an after image behind. The image was so vivid that Crystal, who was looking from the car, saw 2 Daniels appear. One stopped in time while the other in the air with a fist inches from the face of her bodyguard. Daniel looked at Gun with a face of utter seriousness. He needs to give his all to not die here today. His position was the same that Saitama had while giving the first serious punch at Cosmic Garu. Gun eyes widened and slowly moved and followed Daniel's body. The fists connected, distorting his face and the air around. Ripples move all over his head. And with a strength miles higher than the previous hits, Daniel brought Gun face on the ground. Boom! A 3-meter crater formed from the impact. Gun brain slammed on the skull, while his eyes faltered for a moment, causing him to close them, his face contorting in pain, while Daniel spun from his position and kicked again. Gun, being the experienced man that he was, grabbed the ground and moved away, narrowly dodging the second attack. Daniel used the power from his kick to propulse himself towards Gun. The white ghost didn't back up and used Kyokushin karate and pooched, meeting the fist of the masterpiece. Clag. A metallic sound seemed to make its presence known. Since the two have really high hard fists, the clash stayed on a stalemate for a second, but with a crazy smile Gun applied more force and pushed Daniel away, who used that exact moment to grab Gun's hand and flip him up. Gun found himself on the air again, and a kick landed on his side, making his body fly and slam on the wall, greatly damaging it. Daniel landed and looked at Gun, who walked out from the rubble with a smile, his head bleeding but his smile even more visible. Gahaha. Amazing, you are really a talent. He shot towards Daniel, and using Kyokushin karate, he unleashed multiple punches. Daniel took a deep breath and copied Gun perfectly, and met his punches. The two entered on a flurry of attacks with the intention of damaging the other. Gun landed a punch towards Daniel's face, and taking one himself. But the two didn't stop and continued. Daniel weaved while deflecting 5 punches, and landed an uppercut on Gun's chin, making his smile morph into a grunt. Then Daniel, with speed and precise movement, used an acupuncture technique to stop Gun's body temporarily by pressing key parts. Gun's body stopped mid-attack, his eyes widening, and before he could regain control, Daniel lowered his body on the right, while his right hand took a sword form, just like the former King of Seoul, and with speed and precision, he moved his body and slashed Gun's torso. The suit got cut along with the skin. A massive slash scar appeared from the left top towards the right body. The power and speed of the attack made Gun's body raise from the ground momentarily, and Daniel kicked his chest, making him fly again. But this time Gun regained his bodily control and moved it. He placed his feet on the fall and jumped from it, speeding towards the tired Daniel like a bullet. Gun laughed loudly while grabbing Daniel's face and slamming him on the ground. He then began to hammer his face with blows on blows. Gahaha, this is all you can do. It's not enough. Even with all the attacks Daniel landed on Gun, his body was extremely strong and Daniel's strength was still not at that level. Gun was still not serious with Daniel. Gun stopped while looking at the passed out Daniel with his face all bloodied up. I guess you're still not at that level, a pity. But you're good enough. Better than that Johan kid. He was ready to get up, but then Daniel's eyes moved and opened. Gun looked at them, and his face stood there in daze for a microsecond. He recognized those eyes. So with pure instinct his body moved itself, and before Daniel could fully enter in that state, Gun punched his face with enough strength to knock him out for good. Gun's face was serious. He looked at the passed out Daniel and narrowed his eyes. You have it too. Who are you? He got up and looked at Crystal. He then walked away and looked at Daniel. We will meet again. He then entered inside the car and drove away. Meanwhile, Duke and Jinho ran towards the scene. When Daniel walked away from them, the two talked for a minute, and then walked away. Only after some time that they heard loud sound of a battle near Daniel, that they looked at each other, and ran towards the location. Arriving just after Gun left, the two looked at how badly messed up Daniel was and widened their eyes in shock. How? Duke asked while Jinho immediately checked Daniel's body and signed in relief. He was just sleeping. Jinho looked at the area, destroyed walls and floor, debris and dust everywhere. So this is the result of a battle at his level, he pondered and helped Daniel up. The duo took the mad dog to an hospital. The next day, the festival begun, and while everyone was having their fun on a nearby hospital, a patient was currently inside a room. His face and body was all bandaged up while he was sleeping. Suddenly his eyes opened, and he looked frantically around.